Hi, welcome to my video on the least common denominator. Least common denominator, the first letter in least is L, first letter in common is C, and the first letter in denominator is D. Put it all together and we have an abbreviation called LCD, least common denominator. The least common denominator of two or more fractions is the least common multiple of the denominator. Note, least common denominator is the same as the least common multiple, or that is, we find them the same way. The only thing is they are in the denominator of a fraction. If you have the numbers 2 and 5, the least common multiple of 2 and 5 is 10. 10 is the lowest multiple of 2 and 5. Because they're prime, we just multiply them. We have fractions. 2 and 5 could be a half. 5 could be 3/5. If you take the 2 and the 5 and put them in the denominators to make these fractions, then your denominators are the 2 and the 5. And the least common denominator is the same as the least common multiple, so we have a 10. Again, least common denominator is the same as the least common multiple. You find them in the same way. If you have a 9 and a 6, the least common multiple, well, 9 is 3 times 3, which is 3 squared. 6 is 3 times 2. That's the prime factorization. The least common multiple is I have to take a 3 and a 2, because they're the factors. I have to take the largest exponent of each, which is a 2. That's a 2, and that's a 1, so I have to take a 2. That makes it 9 times 2, so the least common multiple of 9 and 6 is 18. 9 and 6 will divide into 18. Fractions for a 9 could be 4/9. Fractions for a 6 could be 5/6. Any denominators with 9 and 6, these are the fractions. You could put 4/9, 1/9, 2/9, any fraction. So because these are the fractions, we know that we have denominators of 9 and 6. And the LCD of these two fractions is 18, because we worked out the least common multiple. Again, least common denominator is the least common multiples. So we practiced the least common multiples in previous videos. Check it out. I have many videos on GCFs and LCDs. Previous to this, we found to find the least common denominator of fractions, any method for finding the LCD can be used. In previous videos, we did the list of the multiples of a number, the ladder, and the prime as 3 methods for finding them. I'm just reviewing these right now, just to put it back in your heads. Let's find 1/4 and 5/6 and work out the different methods. So 1/4 is the fraction, and 5/6 is the other fraction. Your denominators are 4 and 6. So I'm going to use these methods down here now to show you that working out the least common multiple is the same as working out the least common denominator. List of factors, list of multiples of 4, which is my denominator. 1 times 4 is 4. 2 times 4 is 8. 3 times 4 is 12. 4 times 4 is 16. List of multiples of 6 is 1 times 6 is 6. 2 times 6 is 12. And as you notice, your multiples, the common multiple is 12. Least common multiple of 4 and 6 is 12, working it out this way. This is when you list the multiples and pick out the least common, which is your least. 12 now is your least common denominator. We have denominators of 4 and 6 again, but we're going to use the ladder method. So we put down the 4 and the 6. The ladder method, we make an L. divide by any factor of 4 and 6. 2 is a common factor, so 4 divided by 2 is 2, 6 divided by 2 is 3. Again, we divide by any of those factors. 2 again, 2 into 2 goes once. 2 does not go into 3, so we bring the 3 down. 3 is a common factor, so 3 don't go in, so we bring the 1 down. 3 into 3 goes 1. We end up with 1s, so my LCD is 2 times 2 times 3. Sorry, my LCM is 2 times 2 times 3, which is 4 times 3 is 12. My least common multiple is also my least common denominator. I'm going to get the same answer each time, but I'm just working out the different methods. Prime factorization for the denominators of 4 and 6. Prime, we break it down to 2 times 2, which is 2 squared. 6 is 2 times 3, which is, in the factor 3, we get a 2 and a 3, so that's the same as 2 times 3. The least common multiple is we write down each factor. We have a factor of 2 and 3. The largest exponent of the 2 and the 1 is a 2. So you can see we have a 4 times 3, which again gives us the 12. And 12 is the least common denominator. So it's just different methods for working it out. I prefer to use the prime factorization because it uses more fundamentals and it works later on when we do rational expressions, etc., etc. Find the LCD by using the prime factorization. Again, I stress the prime factorization. Note the LCM is the LCD. So when we look at the denominators of 2 and 3, remember, even though they're the denominator, we're working it out as if they're multiples. Multiples of 2 and 3 is 6. The denominator for these fractions, least common denominator, is 6. The denominators are 10 and 15. The least common multiple, well, 10 is 2 times 5. 15 is 3 times 5. So we have least common multiple. We have to write down a 2. We have to write down a 3. And we have to write down a 5. The largest exponent is 1. So that's 6 times 5, 30. So the least common multiple is 30, which is the same as my least common denominator. The denominators are 8 and 6. Break it down. 2 times 4, which is 2 times 2. So that's 2 cubed. 1, 2, 3. 6 is 2 times 3. Least common multiple, we have to write down the factors of 2 and 3. The largest exponent of 2 is 3. Remember, that's 2 to the 1, understood. So we take a 3. 3 is only 1 3. So that's 8 times 3 is 24. So the least common denominator is 24. Remember, least common denominator is your least common multiple. Just work them out the same way. The denominators are 4, 9, and 6. 4 is 2 times 2, which is 2 squared. 9 is 3 times 3, which is 3 squared. 6 is 2 times 3. There's your prime factorization of each number. Now, least common multiple, we write down each factor of 2 and a 3. There's a 2 and a 3 only. The largest exponent of 2 is a 2, because that's a 1, that's a 2. The largest exponent of 3 is a 2. Remember, 3 to the 1, understood? So 2 is the largest for the 3. 2, 3 to the 2, 3 to the 1, 2 is the largest. 4 times 9 is 36. So the least common denominator is the same as your least common multiple when you work them out. 36. 4, 9, and 6. 36 is the smallest number that each of these will divide into. Remember, they're like, these denominators are factors of this now. 25, 15, and 2 are my denominators. 25 is 5 times 5, which is 5 squared. 15 is 3 times 5. And the 2 is already prime. Can't break it down. Now, we need to put these, let's go with there's a 2, and there's a 3, and there's a 5. 2 is a 1, highest exponent. 3 is a 1. 5 has there's only one 5, so it has to be 5 squared. 6 times 25, 150. Least common multiple is 150. Least common denominator is 150. So 25, 15, and 2. The least common denominator of these is 150. 24. 5 over 24 and 3 over 20. Let's look at your denominators. Break down 24 is 2 times 12. 12 is 3 times 4. 4 is 2 times 2. So that's a 2 and a 3. We have 1, 2, 3, 3 2s and 1 3. 24 is 2 times 10. 10 is 2 times 5. So 20 is 2 times 5. And there's two 2's, which makes 4. So that's your 20. Now the least common multiple, we have a 2, we have a 3, and we have a 5. The largest power of 2 is 3. 3 is alone 1. 5 is alone, we have a 1. 8 times 15, and 15 times 8 is 120. So your least common denominator is 120. Least common multiple, least common denominator. I work them out by the prime factorization. Let's do many more examples. Sometimes we can work them out fast. We don't have to, do the prime factorization. If you can see the number right away, knowing least common denominator is the least common multiple. 3 and 5, least common multiple is 5, so the least common denominator is 15. 15 is the smallest number that 5 and 3 are divided into. 6 and 12, least common denominator, 12 is a multiple. 6 is also has a multiple of 12, so the least common denominator is 12. Least common multiple 12, least common denominator 12. 4 and 14, let's break it down. 2 times 2, 2 squared. 14 is 2 times 7. So the least common multiple, we have a 2 and we have a 7. But the 2, the largest power is 2. We only have 1 7. So that's a 4 times 7. 28 is my least common multiple, which is also my least common denominator. 4 and 14 will divide into 28. 8, 4, and 3. 8 is 2 times 4. 4 is 2 times 2, so that's 2 cubed. 4 is 2 times 2, which is 2 squared. And 3 can't break down. So we have a 2 and we have a 3. The largest exponent of 2 is 3. 3 is all by itself, so that's 8 times 3. So the least common multiple is 24. The least common denominator is 24. I keep repeating. Least common multiple is the least common denominator. I tell you, when you get used to it, everything will be okay. Now, can you look at 15, 10, and 25 and tell me what multiple will be the least one for these? If you can't, you had to break it down. So 15 is 3 times 5. 10 is 2 times 5. 25 is 5 times 5, which is 5 squared. So I have a 3 times 5, 2 times 5, 5 squared. So I have a 2, a 3, and a 5 are all the factors. A 2, there's only 1 2, there's only 1 3, and there's a 5 and a 5 and a 5. The largest exponent is 2. So that's 6 times 25. So we have a denominator of 150, the least one, which is the least common multiple. Again, when the numbers get larger, breaking it down to prime factorization is you get to work it easy. 5 and 7 are primes, so the least common multiple is 35, so the least common denominator is 35. We don't have to work anything out, just multiply them. 18 and 27, least common multiple, same as the least common denominator. 18 is 2 times 9. 9 is 3 times 3. So that's 2 times 3 squared. 27 is 3 times 9, which is 3 times 3. So that's 3 cubed. So the multiple is 2 and a 3 factor. I have a 1 for power of 2. The largest power of 3 is the 3, because we have 3 squared and 3 cubed. We take the 3 cubed. So that's 2 times 27, which is 54. So could you look at 18 and 27 and say 54 was your least common multiple, or your least common denominator? Working it out, make sure. Is a way to make sure you get the right answer. Again, there's the numbers. We have a 10, 12, and 90, or 9. So can you see the least common denominator here? Break it down. 2 times 5. 12 is 2 times 6, which is 2 times 3. So that's 2 squared times 3. Notice I could write this down again, but sometimes when you do it fast, you don't have to. You know that's a 2 and a 5. 9 is 3 times 3, which is 3 squared. Least common multiple, we need a 2. We need a 3. And we need a 5. 2 and a 3 and a 5. The largest power of 2 is 2. The largest power of 3 is a 2. And we have 1 5. So that's 4 times 9 times 5. If you think about it, that's a 20 times 9. 180 is my least multiple, my least common denominator. As you can see now, there's developed a pattern for finding the least common denominator. 6. Can you look at these numbers and see the least common denominator? Well, I can. I'm used to it. But if you work them out, 2 times 3, 2 times 5, 3 times 5. No extra powers, only ones. So I have a 2, a 3, and a 5, if I write them in order. I have 2 to the 1, 3 to the 1, 5 to the 1. So that's 6 times 5, 30. My least common multiple is 30. 30 is, 6 into 30 goes 5, 10 into 30 goes 3, 15 into 30 goes 2. So remember, these denominators are factors. So the least common multiple is 30, which is my least common denominator. Notice I have a 4, 8, and 16. I can see that 16 is the large multiple, but 8 is also a factor of 16. 4 is a factor of 16. So 16 is my multiple, which is my least common denominator. Because 4 and 8. 16 is multiples of 4 and 8. You can break them all down. But I just have a bit of fun. 4 is 2 squared. 8 is 2 times 4, which is 2 times 2, which is 2 cubed. 16 is 2 times 8, which is 2 times 4, which is 2 times 2. So 16 is 2 to the 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Notice we have a 2, the only factor, and the largest power is 4, which gives me a 16. If you notice that, again, 4, 8 can divide into 16, so there's your multiple, there's your least common denominator. Also notice that the least common denominator of 16, 8 is in 16, 4 is in 16. 12 and 48, well, let's break it down. 3 times 4, 2 times 2. So that's 2 times 3 in order, 2 squared and a 3. 2 times 2 is 2 squared. 48, I could go 6 times 8. And 6 is 2 times 3. 8 is 2 times 4, which is 2 times 2. So, prime factorization of 48 is, I have a 2 and I have a 3. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 2s, 1 3. That's a 16 times 3, 48. It checks. Least common denominator, I have a 2 and I have a 3. The largest power of 2 is 4. Largest power of 3 is only a 1. 16 times 3 is 48. Notice 48, 4 12 makes 48. 12 is a factor of 48, so your least common multiple is 48. 9, 6, and 10. 9 is 3 times 3, which is 3 squared. 6 is 2 times 3. 10 is 2 times 5. No need to rewrite them. I'm going to, just to make sure. There they are. I have factors of 2, a 3, and a 5. 1 is my largest exponent. For 3, I have a 2 and a 1, so I picked a 2. 5 is only 1 5, so I have a 2 times 9 times 5. 2 times 5 is 10. 10 times 9 is 90. So my least common multiple is 90. My LCD for these three is the same, 90. Number 13, 11, 35, and 14. Denominators, break them down. 3 times 7. 14, 2 times 7. Can't go any lower, so my least common multiple, I have a 2, I have a 3, I have a 7, and the largest power is 1. 6 times 7, 42. Multiple is 42. My least common denominator is 42. 35, 2 times 3 times 7. Oh, my mistake. I checked as 5. My mistake. I said 35 was 3 times 7. It's 5 times 7. So I have a 2, 5, and 7. That's 10. So that's a 70. Sorry about that. What I did, I checked my answer, and I said 35 goes into 42. No way. 35 got a factor of 5, so I should have a factor of 5 over in this LCD. So by checking my answers, or can I divide these two into this? If I can, then I probably have the LCD or the LCM. So check your work. 50 and 20. 50 is 2 times 25, which is 5 times 5, which is 2 times 5 squared. 20 is 2 times 10, which is 2 times 5, which is 2 squared times 5. I have a 2 and a 5. And 2 has a highest power of 2. The 5 has a power of 2. 4 times 25 is 100. Least common multiple is 100. Least common denominator. Notice 50 times 2 is 100. 20 times 5 is 100. Least common multiple is your least common denominator. Or the workings of out, how you work them out is the same, but denominators are in the denominators of fractions. Just a review, little comments. Again, repeat. Least common multiple is the least common denominator. Only difference, you have the fractions. Numbers in your denominators are fractions, are least common denominators when you work them out in order to, as you're going to see later, in order to add and subtract. Each denominator is a factor of the LCD. Each denominator, remember, are factors. Check them out. Divide the denominators into the LCD to make sure you're right. Multiplying the denominators will give you a common denominator, but not always. So if you take the fractions and multiply them all together, you'll get a common denominator, but it won't be the least one. An example, if you take 1 over 10 and 1 over 4, if you multiply them, you'll get a 40. 40 is a multiple, but it's not the least one. The least one, 10 is 2 times 5. 4 is 2 times 2, which is 2 squared. So we have a 2 and a 5. The largest power of 2 is 2. And we have 1 5. So that gives us 4 times 5, which is 20. So the least multiple of 10 and 4 is 20. But a common multiple would be 40. You could still work it with a 40, but you just have larger numbers. I see this in some people just take those two numbers and multiply them together. Yes, it works, but it's not the least. But it works. Finding the least common denominator by prime factorization uses more math fundamentals, which will be needed. Again, you heard me say this before for previous videos. Simplifying and adding and subtracting rational expressions. Rational expressions are fractions, but they got algebra in them. Like they got, x over x plus 1, etc., etc. Rational expressions. Solving equations with rational expressions in grade 11 and 12. Very important to find the LCD of fractions with numbers. And if you like my video, you can click on my like button, my subscribe button, and my notification bell, and you can write a comment. If you like my videos and how I'm teaching, then. And you can also visit my website, mathfullyexplained.com. Information about me and my degrees in teaching. My videos, teaching strategies used. My YouTube channel is another section that has the topics, the number of videos on each topic. The videos completed are in black font. The videos to be completed are in red font. Thank you. Bye-bye.